I thought I knew everything about love, about how it could make you feel invincible, unstoppable. Emily and I were perfect together. 2 years of laughter, shared dreams, and whispered secrets in quiet corners of coffee shops. But everything changed the night I brought her home to meet my family. I never told her the truth, not because I was ashamed, but because I feared what it would do to us. What she didn't know was that my real mother, who I hadn't spoken about, was the CEO of the very company where her mother worked. And the moment Emily found out, everything shattered. She called me the son of a shameful woman and walked out of my life for good. But what she didn't know was that her mother's career was teetering on the edge, and I knew exactly how to tip it over. What would you do if you had the power to destroy the person who hurt you? Emily and I had the kind of love that felt like it belonged in a movie. We met in a small cafe by the university, both of us studying late into the night, trying to finish assignments and chase our dreams. She was ambitious, driven, and had a smile that could light up the entire room. I remember the way her laugh echoed in my ears, the way we stayed up for hours talking about everything and nothing at all. For the first time, it felt like I had found someone who truly understood me. I didn't want her to see the cracks in my world, the parts I wasn't ready to share. My life had always been divided between two worlds, one where I was just another college student, trying to get by, and another where my mother was the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation. The problem was, I never knew how to merge the two. I kept my mother's success hidden because I didn't want anyone to think I was just riding on her coattails. But when Emily asked about my family, the truth couldn't stay buried forever. I brought her to dinner at my father's house, the one place where I felt somewhat normal. The moment she met my stepmother, Donna, I could tell she was uncomfortable. Donna had always been there for me, raised me after my mother left when I was just a kid, but her job made me nervous. She worked in a job that people didn't understand, a bartender at a gentleman's club. It wasn't exactly the kind of thing you talked about at dinner parties. At first, Emily didn't say much, but I could see it in her eyes. Her mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments of information. The questions came fast and sharp. "What exactly does Donna do?" she asked, her voice casual, but I could hear the judgment beneath. I watched as Donna shifted uncomfortably, trying to downplay her job. "I work in hospitality," she said, her voice steady but the smile not quite reaching her eyes. But Emily wasn't having it. She pushed harder, until Donna finally relented. "I'm a bartender at the Velvet Room," she said, her voice losing some of its confidence. That was when it happened. I saw Emily's face change. The judgment was immediate, and I couldn't stop it. She barely spoke for the rest of the evening, and when we left, the silence was deafening. In the car, I tried to break the tension, but she wouldn't even look at me. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally asked, her voice cold. "Why would I?" I replied, trying to keep my composure. "It's just a job." But she wasn't listening. "Just a job," she repeated, disbelief dripping from her words. "Chassie, that's not just a job. That's... What kind of woman does that?" Her words stung, and I felt the weight of her disappointment crush me. I didn't know how to explain. How could I tell her the truth? That my mother, the woman she'd never met, was the one who owned the very company her mother worked for. How could I tell her the truth about the life I had been hiding for so long? The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. When she dropped me off that night, she didn't even kiss me goodnight. I thought about calling her, begging her to understand, but something told me it was already too late. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, about how Emily had looked at me, not as the man she loved, but as something beneath her, something unworthy. The days that followed were a whirlwind of confusion and frustration. Emily wasn't answering my calls, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. I tried to reason with myself, tried to convince myself that she'd come around, that once she thought it through, she'd realize it didn't matter what Donna did for a living. But deep down, I knew the truth. Emily wasn't just angry at Donna's job. She was angry at me for not telling her the truth, for hiding the life I'd been living under the shadow of a mother I couldn't even admit to her. I spent hours pacing around my apartment staring at my phone, hoping she would call, hoping she would reach out. But there was nothing. It felt like everything I had worked for, everything I had built with Emily, was crumbling to pieces before my eyes. Then 2 days later, I got the call. "We need to talk," Emily said, her voice as cold and distant as I'd ever heard it. We agreed to meet at the same coffee shop where we'd met for the first time. I was anxious, hoping she'd had time to calm down, hoping I could fix things. When I arrived, Emily was already sitting at a table near the back, staring into her coffee cup like it held all the answers. Her expression was unreadable, but the tension in the air was suffocating. I sat down across from her, my heart pounding in my chest. "You've been avoiding me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been trying to reach you, Emily. What's going on?" She didn't meet my eyes. Instead, she took a deep breath and started speaking, her words sharp and deliberate. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling slightly, but still firm. "I can't be with someone who comes from a background like yours. Someone whose family is, well, you know what I mean?" She finally looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and anger. "My mother taught me to always aim for better, to be with someone who has the same values, the same class." I felt my stomach drop. "Class," I repeated, barely able to believe what I was hearing. "You're breaking up with me because of Donna's job." "It's not just Donna's job, Ethan," Emily snapped, her voice rising now. "It's everything. You never told me about your mother, never told me about your connections. And now I find out that your mother is the boss of mine. How could you hide that from me? You lied to me, Ethan. And I can't be with someone who lies to me about the most important things." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I wanted to yell, to tell her that I wasn't lying, that I didn't want her to think differently of me, because of what my family did. But the words wouldn't come. I just sat there staring at her, helpless. "You think I'm ashamed of my mother's job?" "But that's not it," I said quietly. "I'm not ashamed of Donna. She's been the only person who's ever really been there for me, and I didn't want to lose you because of her. You don't understand what it's like, Emily. You don't get what it's like to be caught between two worlds, to never feel like you belong in either one." "I don't care, Ethan," Emily said, her voice softening but still resolute. "I can't do this anymore. I can't be with someone who's from a family like yours. I don't belong in your world, and you don't belong in mine." Her words hit me like a slap to the face, each one digging deeper than the last. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words didn't come. I wanted to tell her that I loved her, that none of this mattered, that I'd do anything to make things right, but she was already standing up, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she said, her voice now barely a whisper. "I really thought we had something, but I was wrong." And with that, she turned and walked out of my life. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the empty chair across from me, wondering where everything had gone wrong, wondering how I had gone from being the man she loved to the son of a shameful woman. Days passed after the breakup, but the weight of Emily's words still clung to me like a shadow. I couldn't escape the feeling that I had lost something precious, not just in terms of Emily, but in how I saw myself. Her rejection stung more than I could have imagined, but what hurt the most was that it wasn't just about me. It was about everything I had kept hidden. The truth about my family, my real mother, and the worlds we both lived in but could never fully understand. I kept thinking about that conversation at the coffee shop. Emily's words kept echoing in my mind. I can't be with someone from that kind of background. It wasn't just about Donna's job. It was about me, my lineage, my connection to a world she didn't want to be a part of. It felt like I wasn't just being rejected because of my family's status, but because I wasn't good enough to be her equal. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had something Emily didn't know. I had power. Power that could change everything. Power that could make her see me differently. It wasn't just about family, money, or connections. It was about the real power I had in my hands, something that could shatter the lives of the people who had judged me so harshly. I thought about my mother, Victoria, The world didn't know her for who she truly was. Everyone saw her as the CEO of a powerful financial corporation, but they didn't know the woman behind the title. She was ruthless when she needed to be, but she also had a heart. A heart that, I realized, might be able to solve all of this. I hadn't told Emily about Victoria because I didn't want her to love me for the wrong reasons. But now, as I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the decision became clear. It wasn't about Emily anymore. It was about the message I needed to send. Emily had made her choice, and now I had the power to make one of my own. It was time to stop hiding in the shadows of my family and use my position for something that could make her, and everyone who had ever judged me, understand exactly what I was capable of. I knew what I had to do. The next morning I called my mother. I had never spoken to her about Emily or the things that had happened, but now I needed her help. I needed her to pull strings, to create the situation that would make Emily and her mother finally see the power I had been quietly carrying all this time. "Victoria, I need you to do something for me," I said when she picked up the phone. "Something that could hurt someone's career. It's about Beverly, Emily's mother. She's been angling for a promotion at Hartley Industries for years, and she's always been passed over. I need her to be removed from the running." There was a long pause on the other end. Then, she spoke in her usual calm tone. "What exactly do you want me to do?" "I want to make her position untenable. I want her to see what it's like to lose everything." I said, my voice low, controlled. "I want to watch her struggle. I need her to know what it feels like to be on the outside, just like Emily made me feel." Victoria's response was measured, but I could hear the sharpness in her voice. "You understand that once we do this, there's no going back, don't you? You'll be using your position to hurt someone personally, not professionally." "I understand," I replied, my voice hardening. "But she's the one who pushed me into this. Now, I'm just giving her a taste of what she deserves." The line went quiet again. Then, in a tone that was almost amused, my mother replied, "Very well. I'll handle it." And with that, my fate, and Beverly's, was sealed. The days that followed felt like a blur of planning and anticipation. I had always been the type to stay in the background, observing, calculating. But now, I was at the center of a storm I had created. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily and how she had seen me. How in her eyes, I had gone from being the man she loved to someone beneath her, someone tainted by my family's wealth and power. But now it wasn't just about her. It was about Beverly and the way she had looked down on me. How she had taught her son to judge others based on where they came from, not who they were. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but every time I remembered the way she had spoken to me, every time I thought of Emily's disappointed face, the justification seemed clearer. I wanted to hurt Beverly, to make her feel as small as she had made me feel, and I knew just the way to do it. Use the power my mother held over her job to destroy her career. My mother had already started the restructuring process at Hartley Industries, and I knew it was only a matter of time before Beverly would be left with nothing. But as the days passed, I began to feel the weight of what I was about to do. There was a fine line between justice and cruelty, and I was beginning to see how easily I could cross it. I kept telling myself that I was just giving Beverly a taste of her own medicine, that she deserved to lose everything after the way she had treated me and my family. But deep down, I knew I was doing it for revenge, not for any greater purpose. Victoria called me one evening to check in on the progress. "How are you holding up, Ethan?" she asked, her voice calm and steady as always. "I'm fine," I lied, leaning against the kitchen counter, my hand gripping the edge as I stared out the window at the city lights, just waiting for everything to fall into place. She paused for a moment before speaking again. "You know what this will cost you, don't you?" Her words cut through me like a knife. She wasn't asking about the financial cost, or even the cost of the corporate restructuring. She was asking about the personal cost, the cost of becoming someone who used power for personal gain, who hurt others simply because they could. "I'm not doing this for me," I said, though even I didn't believe it. "I'm doing this because Beverly needs to understand what it's like to be powerless. She can't keep walking all over people like she has been." Victoria's voice softened. Be careful, Ethan. Power is a double-edged sword. Once you use it to hurt someone, you can't undo it. And you may find that the cost is higher than you think. I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I stood there, feeling the weight of her words settle into me. But I had already made my decision. I couldn't back down now. Not after everything that had happened. Not after how Emily had made me feel. The next day, I received the confirmation. Beverly had failed her presentation. Her future at Hartley Industries was on the line. It was the beginning of the end for her. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the text from my mother announcing that Beverly's position was going to be eliminated. The restructuring would be final in the morning. And I felt nothing. No sense of victory, no sense of justice, just a gnawing emptiness that I couldn't shake. I thought I would feel satisfaction, relief, even some kind of power over the situation. But instead, all I felt was a deep, hollow pit in my stomach. Was this really what I wanted? To see someone's life crumble because of my actions? To know that the person I was becoming could easily destroy someone else's future just to prove a point? The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't just using my power to get back at Beverly. I was using it to hurt everyone who had ever doubted me, everyone who had ever looked at me and seen only the family I came from. But in the process, I was losing myself. I was becoming the very thing I had always hated, someone who used others as pawns for personal gain. And then it hit me, Emily. She had been right. It wasn't about my family or my background. It was about me. I had let my anger and hurt blind me to what was truly important. I had become the kind of person who used others for revenge, not for justice. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the phone in my hand. I could still do it. I could still call Victoria and tell her to finalize the plan, to ensure Beverly's career was destroyed. But a voice inside me told me that if I did that, I would lose something much more important, myself. I put the phone down. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of dread in my chest. I hadn't slept a wink, my mind running through the events of the past week like a broken record. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Beverly's face, her struggle during the presentation, her desperation, the way she clung to her job, knowing that if she failed, her entire world would collapse. I had been so sure that destroying her would give me some form of satisfaction, but all I felt now was hollow. The phone was still sitting on my desk, the one I had put down the night before. I hadn't called Victoria. I hadn't confirmed the final steps of the restructuring. Something inside me had stopped, a voice in my head telling me that this wasn't the way forward. I had been so focused on hurting the people who had hurt me, but now the cost of that revenge seemed too steep. It wasn't just Beverly's career that was at stake. It was my own humanity. I stood up, pacing around my apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in, and for the first time in days, I wasn't sure what to do. I needed answers. I needed to understand what was really at stake here, more than just corporate power or personal gain. I grabbed my phone and dialed Victoria's number. "Ethan," she answered, her voice calm, as if she already knew why I was calling. "Victoria, I need to talk," I said, my voice tight. "I need to talk about what's happening with Beverly." "About everything." There was a pause on the other end. "What's changed?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. "I can't go through with it," I said, almost immediately, the words tumbling out. "I can't use my power like that." I thought I wanted to destroy her, to make her understand how I felt. But the truth is, I don't want to be the person who does that. I don't want to use my family's power to tear someone apart. Victoria was silent for a long moment, and then she spoke, her voice steady and thoughtful. "Ethan, the decision you're facing right now is one that will shape who you become. I knew when you asked me for help that this wouldn't be easy. Power is tempting, and it's easy to use it to exact revenge. But once you use it like that, there's no going back." "And you've just realized that?" "I didn't want to be like them," I said quietly. "I didn't want to be like Emily's family. I thought I had to prove something. But now I just feel empty." Victoria's voice softened. "Revenge is easy, Ethan. Mercy, on the other hand, is what makes us human. The real power comes in choosing to do the right thing, even when it costs you." I felt a weight lift off my chest as her words sank in. For the first time in days, I wasn't consumed by anger or resentment. I was starting to see the bigger picture. My mother's power, my own ability to influence people. It could all be used for something greater, something more meaningful than just hurting others. I could choose a different path, a better one. I'm going to stop it, I said, finally making up my mind. I'm going to tell you to pull back the restructuring. Beverly doesn't need to be destroyed. I've made my decision. I'm not going to let my anger control me anymore. I'm proud of you, Ethan, Victoria said softly, and this decision will make you a better leader, a better person. I hung up the phone and sat back down in my chair. I stared out the window, watching as the city moved below me, unaware of the shift that had just taken place in my life. The feeling of powerlessness that had plagued me for so long had turned into something else. It wasn't weakness, as I had once feared. It was strength. The strength to walk away from revenge, to choose mercy over destruction. It felt liberating. That afternoon, I called Beverly. The conversation was brief, but it was enough. I told her that the restructuring would no longer affect her job, that she would remain in her position. I didn't tell her everything, that I had used my mother's influence to save her, but I knew that my decision was the right one. I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for me. The days after my decision felt strangely empty, like I had made the right choice, but it hadn't completely filled the hole left by everything I'd been through. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, maybe some sense of relief or a weight lifted off my shoulders, but instead, I felt a strange mix of calm and discomfort. It was as if I had done the right thing, but there was still something I needed to confront. I didn't hear from Beverly directly, but I knew the impact of my decision would reach her soon. Victoria had assured me that the restructuring would be adjusted. Beverly's career wasn't over, but it had been changed, shifted in a way that would force her to confront her own limitations. It was a consequence, but not the total destruction I had once wanted. I thought I would feel better about it, but there was still a lingering unease inside me. That unease turned into something much more profound when I ran into Emily again. It happened on a rainy afternoon. I was walking out of the university library, lost in my thoughts, when I saw her standing by the coffee cart, staring out the window at the downpour. She didn't see me at first, and I almost turned around to walk in the opposite direction. But something stopped me. I took a deep breath and approached her, my footsteps tentative on the wet pavement. When she heard me, she turned slowly, her face a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't place. "Ethan?" she asked, her voice soft as if she hadn't expected to see me. I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, it's me. I didn't expect to run into you." There was an awkward pause. We stood there for a few moments, both unsure of what to say next. "How are you?" Emily finally asked, her voice hesitant but genuine. I couldn't lie to her anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I had been holding on to so much anger, so much bitterness, but seeing her standing there, her eyes soft with concern, made me realize that I needed to face the truth. "I'm better," I said, the words feeling strange as they left my lips. "I made some decisions. Not all of them were good, but I think I'm starting to understand what matters. I'm sorry for what happened between us." Emily's expression softened. "Ethan, I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice low. "I didn't mean for everything to get so complicated. But I had to walk away. I couldn't be with someone who didn't tell me the truth." "I know," I said, my voice thick with regret. "I was scared, Emily. Scared of what you would think of me if you knew about my family. But I see now that I wasn't being honest with you, with myself. I should have trusted you." She nodded slowly, and for the first time in months, I felt a connection with her, not the harsh words and judgment we had exchanged, but something deeper, something we had shared before everything fell apart. "I was wrong to judge you, Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was wrong to make assumptions based on your family, but I couldn't help it. I didn't understand your world."
"I get that now," I said quietly.
"But I don't want to be defined by it anymore. I'm not just my family, and I'm not the person who wants to tear people down to make myself feel better." Emily looked at me for a long moment as if weighing my words. Then, slowly, she spoke again. I can't change what happened between us. But I'm glad you figured that out. I really am. I just hope you know what you're doing now. I do, I said, nodding. I do. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I think I've made a mess of everything, Emily. I admitted, my voice quiet. But I'm trying to make things right. She smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile I remembered. It wasn't filled with hope or love anymore. It was just an acknowledgement. A soft, almost sad smile that said, I understand. And with that, she turned and walked away, her figure slowly disappearing into the crowd. It had been days since I saw Emily, and I still couldn't shake the weight of our encounter. Seeing her again, hearing her admit that she had judged me, that she had been wrong, it left me with an odd mix of regret and relief. We both had done things we weren't proud of, said things that couldn't be unsaid. But standing there, in that quiet moment by the coffee cart, I realized that I couldn't change the past. All I could do was move forward and learn from the mistakes I had made. That night I went to the office late, as I often did when I needed to clear my head. The city outside was dark, the streets wet from the earlier rain, but inside the office building, everything felt cold and sterile. I sat at my desk, staring at the skyline, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The phone rang on my desk, breaking the silence. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me pick up the receiver. Ethan. It was Victoria's voice, calm as always. I heard from HR that Beverly's restructuring has been finalized. She's been reassigned to a new position, though she hasn't been let go. I assume you've been informed. Yeah, I replied, my voice sounding distant even to myself. It's done. Good, she said, without hesitation. But how are you doing? I sighed, running my hand through my hair. Honestly, I don't know anymore. I've done something I thought I wanted, but now that it's done, I'm left wondering if it was the right decision. Victoria was silent for a moment, giving me the space to sort through my thoughts. Finally, she spoke again, her tone gentle yet knowing. The right decision isn't always the one that feels good at first, Ethan. Sometimes, doing the right thing means making tough choices, facing uncomfortable truths, and accepting that the path to redemption isn't easy. I leaned back in my chair, trying to absorb her words. I've spent so much time trying to prove something, trying to show everyone that I'm not just a product of my family's wealth. But in the end, I think I lost sight of who I really am. You're human, Victoria said softly, and humans make mistakes. But they also learn from them. That's what makes you a good leader. I smiled faintly, a little surprised at how comforting her words were. I don't know if I'm a good leader yet, but I'm trying to be. You will be, she replied, her voice steady and unwavering. And remember, leadership isn't just about managing people or making the right decisions. It's about understanding your own values and using your power to uplift others, not tear them down. I didn't respond immediately, letting her words sink in. I realized she was right. All my life, I had focused on using my family's power to get ahead, to prove myself, to seek revenge. But true leadership, true strength, came from using that power to make things better. Not just for myself, but for others. As the night went on, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened over the past few weeks. My relationship with Emily had ended, but it had taught me more than I could have imagined. I had learned that revenge was hollow, that power could be both a gift and a curse, and that the person I had to answer to the most was myself. I had taken a dark path, but now I was finding a new way forward, a way where I could use my position to do good, to make a real difference. I wasn't sure what that future looked like yet, but I knew that I was ready to embrace it. That night, I made another call, this time to Beverly. Her voice was shaky when she answered. Ethan? It's me, I said, trying to sound reassuring. I just wanted to check in. How are you holding up? There was a pause, and I could almost hear the surprise in her voice. You're calling me? I'm sorry for the way everything went down. I've been thinking about it, and I don't want you to think I did this just to hurt you. I made the decision to pull back on the restructuring because I don't believe you deserve to lose everything. You've worked hard, and you deserve better." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could feel her hesitating, unsure of what to say. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice hoarse. "I don't know what to say. I never expected this." "You don't have to say anything," I replied quietly. "I just wanted you to know that I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm giving you a chance to rebuild, to make things right." Another long pause. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "But I will do everything I can to prove that I'm not the person I was before. I won't waste this chance." "I believe you," I said, my voice firm now. "But the real question is, what are you going to do with it? This is your chance to do better, not just for yourself, but for everyone who's been affected by your decisions." She didn't say anything for a moment, but I could hear the determination in her voice when she spoke again. "I'll prove to you, and to everyone else, that I can change. I can make this right." I hung up the phone with a sense of finality, knowing that I had done the right thing. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long had finally begun to lift, and while I knew I wasn't perfect, I was finally starting to understand what true leadership and true strength really meant. The following weeks passed in a blur of meetings, corporate restructuring, and quiet self-reflection. I had made peace with the decision I had made, but there was still something unsettled within me. It wasn't just about Beverly or Emily or even the choices I had made to use my power for personal revenge. It was about what came next. I had learned the hard way that power wasn't just a tool for getting what you wanted. It was a responsibility, a weight that came with consequences, both seen and unseen. For so long, I had hidden behind my family's success, thinking that if I played by the rules and kept my distance from the truth, I could keep my world safe. But in the process, I had lost touch with who I really was. I had become someone I didn't recognize, someone driven by the need to prove himself, to destroy those who had hurt him, without thinking about the long-term impact of those choices. But now, I was ready for something different. I had made the right choice with Beverly. I had given her the chance to rebuild, to prove she could do better, and I had chosen mercy over destruction. And in return, I had started to rebuild my own life, one step at a time. The first step in that process was reconnecting with my roots, the people who had never judged me based on my family's wealth or influence, the ones who had been there for me before all of this. My father and Donna had always been my foundation, the ones who taught me the value of hard work, humility, and love. No matter how far I had strayed from those values, they had always been there, waiting for me to return. One evening after work, I drove out to their house. It was a modest home on the edge of town, nothing like the towering skyscrapers that housed the corporations I was now part of. But in its simplicity, it held the warmth and love I had been missing. Donna greeted me with her usual warmth, pulling me into a tight hug as soon as I walked through the door. "You look tired, Ethan," she said, brushing my hair back from my forehead. "Been working too hard." I smiled weakly, sitting down at the kitchen table. "I've been thinking a lot, Donna, about everything, about what's really important." My father came into the kitchen, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. "What's this? Our son finally come home for a visit," he joked, his voice filled with that familiar sense of humor that always made me feel grounded. "Yeah, Dad," I said, laughing. I needed to clear my head. We sat down for dinner, just the three of us, talking about the past and the future. It was simple, but it felt right. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to hide anything. I didn't have to pretend to be someone I wasn't. They loved me for who I was, not for what I could do or who I knew. As we ate, my father put down his fork and looked at me with that serious expression I'd come to know so well. "So, son," he said quietly, "how are you really doing?" I looked at him for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened, the mistakes, the hurt, the choices I had made. But in that moment, I realized something. The hardest thing I had ever done wasn't choosing mercy over revenge. It was admitting that I wasn't perfect, that I had made mistakes, and that I didn't have all the answers. But I was willing to learn, willing to change. "I'm getting there, Dad," I said softly. "I think I'm starting to understand what matters now. Donna smiled at me, her eyes filled with pride. I'm proud of you, Ethan. It's not easy choosing the right path, but you've taken the first step. I nodded, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in a while, I wasn't running from anything. I wasn't hiding behind my family's name or power. I was just Ethan, and that felt enough. A few days later, I met with Victoria again. We sat in our usual spot in the executive dining room, and she looked at me carefully, as though she could read every thought running through my head. So, how are you feeling about everything? She asked, her tone gentle but probing. I'm okay, I said, taking a deep breath. I'm learning. There's a lot I still need to figure out, but I know what matters now. I'm not going to let power control me anymore. I'm going to use it to do something good, to help people, not destroy them. Victoria nodded, a small smile crossing her lips. I'm proud of you, Ethan. You've come a long way. I looked out the window, the city stretching out before me. I'm not the same person I was when I walked in here. I've learned that power isn't just about what you can do to others. It's about what you can do for them. She sat back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. You're right. Leadership is about making decisions that not only serve your own interests, but the interests of everyone. And you've learned that. I'm ready for whatever comes next. I said, my voice steady now. And I'm going to make sure I do it the right way.